Hello, arty peoples, and welcome to another episode of Jerry's Live. My name is Emmy Klein, and I will be your host this evening. Today's class is Jerry's Live 188, so a JL 188, and today we are going to be doing an oil pastel paint-along. I'm very excited because last week we went over a whole lot of details on art supplies and what they were used for and the differences between them, but I didn't get to do a whole lot of art for you guys, so I'm very, very excited this week. So, I have been making posts, and I hope you guys have been seeing them on the Jerry's Live page, the Facebook page, as well as my own Facebook host page, which is Emmy, host of Jerry's Live. On there, I've posted this picture, which is what we're going to be doing today, as well as the reference photo. So if you guys want to be painting along with me today, make sure to go to the group or my host page and pull that picture so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Now, just in case, I did print it off for you guys so you can see it, and I'll have it here just so right in the same area so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Now, before we get too far into all of this, I did want to remind you guys we still have that 9th annual self-portrait contest going on. So if you haven't started, make sure you go do that now. Like tonight, you should get started. It does end April 18th, 2021, in case you're watching in the future. But if you do want to see the details of that and how to submit, go to the Jerry's Artarama website, which is jerrysartarama.com. And in the right-hand side, there is a tab that says Artist Resources. And in that tab, there is another little clicky button that says Contests. And it has all the details of all the different contests we have going on. But that one in particular, it's a self-portrait contest. All you have to do is draw your pretty face. And any media is accepted. So if you're watercolor, acrylic, oil painting, drawing material, any of that is accepted. The only thing that we are not going to accept is photography, so please don't send me your selfies. This is not going to be accepted. So with that contest though, $5,000 in total prizes. The first place winner gets $2,000 of those $5,000, which is a really awesome prize. So I hope you guys submit for that, and time is starting to run out, so make sure you get started on that if you haven't. And if you are started on it, you need to get going and finish it, so you get it in on time. Now, with that being said, let's go over some materials for what we're going to be doing today. This is the one that I completed prior to today, just so I had something to kind of show you guys. Like, this is the end result of where we're trying to go today. But I also grabbed another panel. Just, I clearly can't keep drawing on this, but I mean I could. But to get to here, you do want to get a DaVinci Pro Resist Grip panel. Now this is 11 by 14, and it's kind of disappearing because I have primed it with the Turner acrylic gouache, which is in jet black. So I really like this as a ground for my pastels because it kind of keeps a bit of that like tooth to it, just the acrylic gouache in general, because it is a flat matte surface. But the resist grip on this panel, because it does have that texture to it, it grabs your pastels really nicely. And you know, it doesn't allow your oil pastels to kind of slide over the surface, which is one of those things that, as far as oil pastels are concerned, it's not a fun thing to be fighting. I know oil pastels you can use on a lot of surfaces. If you want to work on paper, I know whenever you put oil on paper, it starts destroying the fibers of the paper. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to be careful with. But oil pastels have an inert oil in them, so they don't really destroy your paper like regular oil paints do. So just kind of keep that in mind. So you can use these on paper as well. I know there's a lot of different tinted papers out there that are really great to work with as well. But this is what I'm going to be working on today because I like the hard surface. I can really scrub my oil pastels straight into that, and it is very sturdy, so I don't destroy my surface. Now, the one that I had used before, excuse me, is a little bit thinner. They do come in the two different thickness of boards. It's just your own personal preference. This one I actually did paint the edges, whereas this one I left them blank. But that's the panel we're going to be working on. Now the actual pastels itself, I'm going to be using the Mungyo gallery pastels. So this is not the professional level. This is more of the student grade, but it's still really lovely colors, and you can still get a really nice finish with them, even though they're not that like higher level. If you want to get the higher level and you've already used these and you're kind of familiar, go for it. They have a higher pigment load, so you're going to be able to get brilliant colors with them a lot easier than you would with these. But it's just, I wanted, honestly, the jumbo size because I'm going to be going through a lot of the details on how to get to these different colors, and I kind of wanted a big coverage, so that's why I went with the jumbo. But I'm also going to have this 72 set over here that I'm going to be using because there's a lot more colors to choose from, and they are lovely. So besides that, so those are my pastels here. Besides that, like I said, the Turner acrylic gouache is what I've primed my surface with. You can actually apply it with just a nice big soft brush. This is the Polar Flow. This is actually what I used. It holds a lot of water. And remember, your Turner acrylic gouache is concentrated, so you don't want to use it straight out of the tube. You want to mix it with some water. Now, you don't have to use jet black. You can use a fun color like carmine. This is a test that I just wanted to kind of show you guys. So if you have a different color ground, and I mean, I completely covered the surface of this, but you can still see little flecks of that red kind of shining through, which is really lovely. And this is a nice way of kind of toning the surface that you're working on and having that color still just kind of sparkle through. And again, this is a resist grip. I think this is a 4x6. But I just wanted to show you that you can also use different colors and you still get a solid coverage with the same oil pastels to where it mostly covers it up, but that color is going to kind of sparkle through. So there's my avocado. Now, you might also be wondering why I have spike oil on the table. The cool thing with the oil pastels is because they are an oil, you can actually blend them with some solvent. And so I'm gonna show you kind of how to do that a little bit later, but that's why that's on there. And then of course, the brushes that I use to do so are a natural bristle brush. You kind of want something that's a little bit stiffer. If you have a nice, soft, really, kind of flowing brush, you're not going to be able to move around your pigments very well. You need something that you can kind of scrub. So the natural bristles on this Pro Stroke brush set is really nice to do that. And they come in, I just got the Explorer set, so you get 5 brushes and you get a huge variety of different sizes. So if you're painting big, you can use a big one. If you're painting small, which is actually probably what I'm going to do for the lightning, is a small little round brush. Those are very, very helpful to do that. And then, of course, I also included some clay sculpting. Excuse me, I'm Butterfingers today. I did include some clay sculpting supplies today, and I know you probably are still sitting there going, what are you talking about? In the teacher's cart, which if you guys want to check out any of these supplies, go to the website, jerrysartarama.com, and in the search bar, type in the code JL188. That'll pull up the teacher's cart for everything I'm talking about here. And then you can actually check that out and then be able to purchase it nice and easy. But these right here are meant for clay. The reason why I use these for my oil pastels is because I sometimes go back in and scratch texture or kind of use this almost like a drawing tool, and I'll show you how I do that as well. But those are really fun to be able to kind of get a different kind of texture surface going on. And then at the very end, Fixative. I'll go over what I have here, but let's jump in before we run out of time. Because we have a lot of pastels to get to. So let me grab my big jumbo ones and move some things around my table. All right. Okay, so there's my reference and this guy. So Like I said, if you wanted to be painting along with me today, you should have toned your panel or your paper or whatever it is that you're working on. If you haven't, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. Just, it's something that you should go back and try and do just to enjoy using that surface color. So I'm going to be using, to get kind of my sketch of what's going on here onto my panel, I'm going to be using this gray rose color, which is like a really nice lavender. Now, with the sketch, it does not have to be exact. I'm not trying to completely reproduce what's going on in this picture. I just want to kind of indicate where things are. So, as you can see, cloud kind of comes in. Right? So that's the first one. Now, I'm actually, before I get too far there, I'm going to indicate where my horizon line is, just to kind of ground my painting here. So it's gonna be right about there. Just gonna do a straight line all the way across. Now, if you can see in the reference photo, probably on the image that I posted on the live group, better than you can on this print, the water, where the water meets the actual beach, it's a little bit further down on this side than it is over here, and I like that, and I kind of want to exaggerate that a little bit more. So I'm gonna be coming down here and making it go back in space. So that'll give a little bit more depth to my drawing. And then of course there's a little boat here. Now if I wanted to, I could make it a lot bigger, or I could make it smaller. Again, I'm not exactly copying everything I see here, but I mean, I mostly did with this one that I did before, but I can kind of play with that. That's artistic license. So I would like to have you guys kind of mess around with those things. Right? So there's my boat. Can you see that on camera, or is that too dark?
A little bit.
Okay, sorry. When you are sketching with this gray rose onto the surface, really light sketches, just in case you don't like what you want, or what you did. You can actually take, let me grab an easy wiper. Got my box of easy wipers here, always handy. If you don't like what you did, you can take an easy wiper and kind of rub that right out, and then it'll mostly disappear. Again, we're just sketching. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I have, this bank kind of comes in over here. And then it does have those little grassy bits that kind of fly up there. I just want to indicate where they are. I'm not trying to make anything perfect. So, then this cloud kind of comes to a bit of a point, and then it kind of drops off, because you can see that rain kind of coming down, which anybody who's been in Florida, where my Floridians at, hey! If you've been there for any amount of time, you've seen in the distance, you can see where the rain kind of stops and starts. It's the weirdest thing. It's almost like somebody's just changed the color of the sky, like a sheet of rain is just coming through. So that's kind of what I wanted to indicate here. Now it's a little bit more exaggerated that way, but that's definitely what I wanted to kind of capture. And then all the clouds kind of come back up, and they almost kind of go like this. So I'm going to kind of start bringing that angle up a little bit. There's this guy right here. And again, if it's not proportionately perfect, not a big deal. They're clouds. No one's going to know. And the weird thing with clouds is you have to remember that they are a kind of a solid surface, or kind of a solid material, but also really not. They are the funnest things to draw and paint, just because they act so weird with the light hitting them. So that's where I'm gonna kind of indicate that. Then I want this guy to come back down. Now right here where it's kind of speckled on my reference here, where it's kind of speckled, where it's got light spots and the dark spots, you can kind of change your reference a little bit and kind of ignore that, because that's a little bit harder to draw when it kind of has that fluctuation back and forth between the light areas and the dark areas. But that's one of those things that I'm not going to really worry about with my drawing here, because I can go back in with a dark color and kind of chunk it back out. Alright, so there is my sort of sketch, right? Yeah. Now you can also see there's some waves and like rocks and stuff. I'm not gonna worry about that. We're gonna pretend like they're not there, because those are the details that I can put in later on, but I'm not gonna be fussy over too much. Now let me grab, is this the, so the cool thing with the jumbo pastels and these the 72 set is that they're the exact same, just larger. So I can actually, oh, it doesn't say the, I was hoping it would say the color on these. I can't interchange these really well. I should have swatched them. This is, you gotta swatch your pastels, just like you would any other paint. So like I was about to go in with this color, and that's way too pink. So reference photo also serves as a scratch paper. I like this color though a little bit better. It's got more of that like mauve, kind of purpley red going to it. So I'm just gonna kind of start laying down some color. Now I am not really worried about form too much, but when it comes to clouds, you gotta kind of remember that when the light hits them, they get brighter, and when on the opposite side of it, where it's in shadow, it's just like a regular form, even though it's made out of water, vapor, and air. It's just a funny thing. So sometimes you can kind of see light kind of shining through it. That's why I really want you to take a look at your reference and make sure you really try to see what's going on in there. So up here, I'm going to continue this same color. Even though the purples are kind of down here, I'm going to continue that same purple kind of up in these clouds too. Just because I want the same color to kind of continue to be repeated throughout. Alright. And because this little bit right here is water, I still want to also repeat that same color because it's going to be reflected in your waters. But I'm not going to worry too much about it. Now with the pastels, you should know they are pretty forgiving, the oil pastels, because if you don't like a color that you put down, you can really scrub over the top of these. And like I said, take an easy wiper and kind of wipe it back out. But like I put this really bright purple up here, and now I'm pretty much just covering it completely. So don't worry if you get the wrong color. You can scrub back on top of it and kind of adjust it a little bit. But you do want to make sure, especially like when you're laying down your first couple colors, really press hard. You need to apply a good amount of color. Let me add some of this purple up here. So right now I'm not going to worry about blending as well. I'm just laying down chunks of color, just kind of where I see it throughout the image. And I'll probably keep going back and forth between like the purples and the blues, and like right here on this part of the cloud, it looks very gray, but the reason why is because the orange of this light is hitting the top of it, and then the blue and purple of that shadow is kind of coming together, and right where they mix, it's making technically mud, but it's visually looking gray. So you can either do that on your panel here and mix the two colors, or you can actually go in and use a gray. Whew, that is a lot darker. So this color I'll probably put up here because I like it. It's just a lot darker than I thought it was. Ooh, shaking the table. So I do want that blue to kind of come in up the top and then down at the bottom here. So I'm going to continue to keep this same blue repeated down here, down in my little like rainy area, and then reflect it in the water. Now whenever I draw water, I don't go up and down, I always go side to side, because that's the direction the waves are going to be in. So even if I'm not technically drawing waves, it gives you the impression of waves. Let me get a little bit of a lighter blue. Yeah, that's the color I wanted. So I think I'm gonna actually, because I did this other painting prior to today, I think I'm gonna make this one a little bit different as far as the colors are concerned. I think I'm gonna play with these blues a little bit more than I did before. Because I don't know if you're like me and you don't really want to do the same painting 13 million times. But this is also why I use that the black as the tone. So even there, like, it's giving that indication of a cloud in shadow, but I actually haven't drawn it. I'm just kind of carving out the lights. Go around my boat. Kind of bring some of that blue down here too. So if I don't really draw my boat and just draw around my boat, I can pretend like it's there. Now I'm gonna actually take, this is one of my favorite tools of the pack that I included, and kind of scratch that back out where that mast is. And it's got some like strings and stuff kind of hanging down, which I can see in the reference photo, but that kind of carved it right back out to where I drew on top of it, but it's pretty forgiving. So let's go with that gray rose again. Now if your pastels start getting a little dirty, make sure you kind of pay attention to that, just because you don't want to start drawing and then all of a sudden, like I had a speck of black on there, and all of a sudden you have like this weird dark streak in there. Again, very forgiving. If you do get that, it's not the end of the world, but it just makes it easier if you kind of just take a easy wiper and kind of just wipe them off, and they'll keep that nice clean.
Speaking of
Pastels.
Easy Wiper,
Yeah.
can you tell them what you mean by what the Easy Wiper is?
The Easy Wiper, it comes in, I think, a 1 pound bag or a 5 pound box. They are just soft cotton rags, that's it. It's just, if you actually lay them out, they're not perfectly square. But it's just like if somebody had like a leftover t-shirt that they just don't want to wear anymore and they just chopped it into squares. Not perfect squares, but squares. That's all it is. And so like I use these all the time because I'm trying to be a little bit more aware of my paper towel use and kind of stop using them for all of my art. And I would burn through them so quickly. So like this is really awesome because I can throw these in the washing machine. I would not throw these in the washing machine with my clothes though. So just be aware, because I'm using them for like pigments and stuff, and I don't know what's going to come off of these. So I'll keep them as a separate load, maybe throw them in with my towels or something, stuff that I just don't care about. But You can also hand wash them. They're really not that hard to kind of knock the dirt back down. But then you can reuse them.
You have time for a question real quick?
Absolutely.
As far as like safety goes for the oil pastels, we have a couple people that are asking if you need to be concerned about it getting on your skin. Should you wear gloves? Does it come off of clothes and hands? Do you have any ventilation issues? That kind of stuff.
Like I said, the oil in this is different from oil paints. So the biggest issue with like oil paints that causes all of those problems are the solvents mixed in, and like the specifically, like when it comes to me using this lavender spike oil as a solvent to start moving my pigments around, that's where you're introducing that problem of ventilation and breathing and having that smell and the toxic, I guess, what's the vapors? That's the word I'm looking for. Toxic vapors that are now evaporating off of your solvents and going into the air that you're breathing. That's where the problem is. When it comes to oil pastels, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Mungyo is non-toxic, aren't they? Should say so in the box.
Stay on the box, yeah.
Sorry, there's a lot of writing on the box.
Look for the AP symbol.
Yeah, right here. I believe, right?
What?
Conforms to.
AP non-toxic standards?
It's got the AP symbol.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah? Non-toxic? I believe it's, yeah, should say that.
Yeah.
Should say it all on the website too. Yeah, oil pastels, the Mungyo oil pastels are non-toxic. So that means that they don't use the pigments in them that have those, like the cadmiums that are pretty much poison. Beautiful poison, but they're poison. So this isn't something that you're gonna have to worry about getting on your hands, specifically this brand. Now other brands, if you want to be aware of that, just wear some gloves. As long as it doesn't get on your skin, it's not a big deal. And the toxicity as far as the smell is concerned is mostly when you introduce solvents. So like this has kind of like a crayon kind of smell, like the wax, but it doesn't actually have any kind of, like I have to like really, I'm looking for a smell, and it's really not that bad at all. So if anybody has like a respiratory, like I know Frida has a lot of reactions to smells. This is something she can do. And it's like oil painting, but without any of those issues, unless you start bringing in solvents, which I'm going to. So Frida wouldn't be able to do that part. So right now I'm just kind of scrubbing in this color. This I can tell you is the wrong color. It's that like, what is that? The gray rose? Yeah, gray rose, so it's like a lavender, but up against this black it's looking more white than anything, which is okay. Because I can always tint that back down. All right, now going to try to stay around this little mast. I should probably be using the smaller ones for this, but happen to have a jumbo in my hand. It's not the end of the world if I draw on top of it. I can always add that back in a little bit later. Because I believe, yep, there's a black in both sets. So you can draw back on top of it. All right. All right. So what's funny is like up here, this color is a sky. Down here, I'm using it for the tops of those clouds because it's kind of keeping that same color consistency throughout. Now the one thing with oil pastels is that you're gonna get some little flakies every now and then. What I like to do is just, yeah, tilt it and tap it on my table and then take like an easy wiper, or you can even use a softer brush and just kind of brush those little flakes off. Again, it's non-toxic. It's not going to be a big deal if you touch it, but if that's something you don't want to, like if you were like Mikey and you don't want to touch it, like that's probably going to not be something you're going to want to like play with. Alright, so this is going to be kind of where that orange meets the gray area. But you know what? I want to add, I think this is the same color I used. Is that? Nope, that's slightly different, but I do really like that color. Ooh, that's pretty. They have such pretty colors. But, oh, you know what? I need a little bit of a darker purple. Let's go with this guy. This is the violet, which is the exact same color as this big one, so I'm just gonna switch. Gives me more coverage.
Emmy, as far as archivability of these, are the pastels archival? Is the substrate archival?
That's why I was talking about when you put oil paints, like traditional oil paints, onto paper, the oils of those start to destroy the fibers of your paper. When it comes to oil pastels, it does not have that same oil binder in them, so you're not going to have that problem with the archivability of them. But when it comes to like light fast ratings, I know every oil pastel is different just because every brand makes them slightly different. So I mean, it always depends. And each color is different usually. I'm trying to see if there's a light fast rating on here. It doesn't actually say it, but I mean, it would say it on the website. So if you're looking for how light fast these are, that's one of those things that you need to go into the tech notes on the website, just that little yellow button, and you can click in there and read up on how light fast these are. But as far as like whether or not this is going to be long lasting, yes, it is. It's especially with this being a hard board. And then I've not only done that, but like I've also toned it with an acrylic, and then on top of that, like I can spray this down and varnish it, which I'll talk to you guys at the end when I'm kind of finishing this up. I'll show you kind of how, well, I can't show you because it's technically, we're inside, so I can't actually show you the varnishing, as far as what you would need to use, I can show you that at the end. But there's ways to kind of varnish this back in and kind of make sure that it sticks. All right, so let's go in with a little bit of that orange. So this is a really nice funky yellow orange, because since all of my shadows and everything are in the blue, this will pop up against that really nicely. And then if I wanted to, I can start going down here and start mixing those colors. I'm going to be trying to work a little bit faster than I normally would, but Katie's telling me that we're already about halfway through, I believe. So I'd probably cover this a little bit more than I already am, like I normally would. But for the sake of today's class, I'm going to try and chunk this in to where you guys can see what I'm talking about. So I am going to kind of bring that orange up here as well, because it's still kind of just filtering through those clouds. Now, as far as, you know what, let me grab that pink. Maybe this one. Yeah, that's a good color. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually blending this blue and this orange together with a bit of a pink. So I'm kind of softening the orange a bit. As you can see, like it's not as bright as down here where I had it. So that's one technique for blending the oil pastels, is to just kind of scrub them together and kind of mix them like that. Now another way of doing that is with this, the spike oil. I'm grabbing the spike oil because it's non-toxic and it's my go-to, but any solvent for like traditional oils will work. And I'm actually I have it poured into this little cup. You don't need much, which is why in the teacher's cart I only added the little 2-ounce bottle, because that would be plenty for what you're looking to do. And like I said, you need a real stiff bristle brush. So this is the I believe this is the bright. So I can actually take this solvent and start almost like I'm painting and moving those pigments around a little bit. Which is another way of blending. Now, a little goes a long way. You really don't need much. Like, I think I put too much up here, which is why it's kind of taking my pigments out of there, but I'm not really too upset about it. Once that dries, and it doesn't take very long because it is a solvent, I can go back on top of that and continue to add more oils, like the oil pastels. So let's do a little bit of this right here. Go back in with that same kind of pink. Kind of get the stuff off of there. And you know what? This is where I wanted that 72 color, because this right here is the, what's the color? Blue-gray. I really like this color. It's so pretty. I'll blend that back in. So it's just like a little bit of a desaturated blue, which I really like for this scene. I got a little bit of that orange. The orange flakes are getting in my way, and if I were to leave them there, this oil pastel will squish them back in, and then you're gonna have to kind of blend those back out, which you can, but it just takes a little bit of muscle and time that I don't have right now. So this gray blue, if I take that, start going into this orange, it'll give me almost like, it's kind of looking a little bit more green than I was expecting, but that's probably because there's a little bit of yellow in this blue, and there's definitely a lot of yellow in that orange. So when it comes to those colors mixing together, they're giving me a nice funky green, which I like for that desaturated kind of cut area. All right. Now, for this rainy bit, I'm gonna kind of make it a little bit lighter. I think that was a little bit too light. Go in with this blue. This is Prussian blue. I do want the bottom of that cloud to get real dark down there. So Prussian blue that I'm using now is a darker pigment, just naturally, like, whereas like this is a lighter pigment. So that's why for my shadows, I'm kind of indicating a little bit here and there. I got little pastel bits all over my thing. But I'm gonna pull that over here for my horizon as well. Go. Kind of keep that horizon going. Let's do a little bit of that. Where's that orange that I had? Actually, I'm gonna use this one because this is a little bit smaller and a little bit easier for me to manipulate. So I'm gonna have that orange kind of reflected in the water. And again, I'm only going side to side. I'm not going up and down. So that will indicate water without me actually having to draw it all. All right, now, really like this. This is Naples Yellow Light. To kind of start indicating the light on top of those waves. And it'll kind of lighten the value of this blue. The other way of blending is your finger. You can absolutely use your finger. Again, if you want to use gloves, you can, but you are gonna have a harder time getting that blend. But you're not gonna have that toxicity issue, so doing this is not gonna hurt you at all. So I do want to take this black before I forget. And I'm going to make my boat completely solid black like a silhouette. I can see detail in here, but I don't want that. I want it to be pretty dark. Yep, I like that. All right, let's do, actually, I'm going to continue that black a little bit over here as well, to kind of darken this area too. So if I don't actually get to this right here, it still looks relatively okay because it's got the colors in it, and that black where I didn't actually draw anything is repeated throughout, so it looks intentional. Now, what color is that? That is nice, pretty red. I'll kind of bring that red up in here too. This is the Deep Matter that I'm using right now. Get that Prussian blue back in there. Kind of darken that purple up a little bit. All right. Scrubbing in those colors. Again, wherever I see it is where I'm going. I'm going to kind of darken that value just where that gets real dark up in there. I'm more or less scribbling. That's I'm not actually worried about my marks because if I need to, I can blend it out with my fingers, but I'm just kind of scrubbing it down. So I'm gonna use a little bit of this black over here just to kind of darken this cloud as well, just to make it look like it's a little bit more cohesive with these colors. This one too. Why not? Does everyone follow along so far? Mm-hmm. We got questions or?
You had one.
What you guys got?
Let's see. Let me find back where I can find it. Can you use linseed oil, walnut oil,
yes.
Tocilene, anything else instead of spice?
Yes, you can. You can use linseed oil if you don't want to use a solvent. That will actually move your pigments around. The one thing with linseed oil that you do need to remember is that that is the oil that will destroy your paper. So if you use it on a panel like this, you're totally fine. If you use it on paper, like an oil pastel on paper, and then you use walnut oil or the linseed oil or any of those different types of oil painting mediums, you're gonna start breaking that bond of the fibers and it will not be archival. So that's where you kind of have to pay attention, because what's the point of doing all this beautiful artwork if it's not going to last? We need our artwork to live on, you know? So let me go in with, this is the chrome yellow, and I'm touching it in right here, right in the middle, for that really bright light, because I just realized I have not chunked that in, and I really want to make sure that those clouds, even though I haven't drawn the whole thing in, it looks intentional. Now, to keep that yellow looking like it should be part of it and not just like a weird chunk of yellow, I'm going to kind of feather it back out along the top and like the bottom. This is where I'm going to kind of scrub it in just to really tint that orange. So this is where I had a really solid layer of orange, and I just went in and kind of really scrubbed it. And that is where oil pastels are so forgiving, which is really fun. So let's get a little bit of this. Is this the, this is not the, this is light yellow. Not Naples yellow, but light yellow. I'm gonna kind of lighten this back up just a little bit to where it's not like boom, lemon yellow in your face. Just to kind of tone it down a little bit. I know in the previous one, I used a lot of like salmon-y colors, which I believe is this, the salmon pink. That would make sense. I used these two colors right here. This is the fresh pink and salmon pink. I use a lot of those in this general area, which I can touch back in as well, just to kind of turn that yellow down just a little bit. Alright, I think that's probably good as far as those little clouds. Let's go in with, this is the salmon pink. So, kind of mute it down a little bit. It's still indicating light though, because it is a nice bright, lighter color. So that will give you that indication of light, as well as the fact that it's really, really warm. It's a nice warm color. So that will make it look like that's where the light's coming from, just because it's got that warm tones to it. Kind of pop that up here. I'm gonna also use it on this cloud to indicate light. Because light is hitting the top of this cloud right here. So I did want to kind of pop that back in. And actually, again, make sure that those same colors are repeated in your water, because it's going to look funny if you got a nice bright orange sky and then all of a sudden your water is blue. Water reflects all those lights. So let's get this area. I'm going to go back in with, I kind of want to go back in with that same gray rose, just as like a bit of a base. Now I'm going to end up mixing this together with a bit of a purple. Although, maybe I want a bit of blue. Let's lay this down kind of all over. And then I can kind of tint it with other colors. Why not? Because remember, I'm not exactly copying this. Just kind of indicating the same kind of clouds. And again, if you want to add a little bit more of a cloud over here to kind of take this dead space out, you can. And actually, I do really like that bright, crazy orange. So that I'm going to add back in. This is the vermilion. Such a fun word to say, vermilion. I feel like I just give you guys a little bit of an insight into my goofy words that come out of my mouth.
It's a good word.
It is a good word. Like emerald.
Are your favorite purple?
I can't say it. Katie?
Dioxazine.
Dioxazine.
Zine.
If anybody has a trick for like making me remember how to pronounce the word dioxazine, tell me please.
Just did it.
I did, but only because you said it. It's just one of those words that, like, I can't say it unless I hear somebody else.
While you're doing that,
Yes.
how long do you let the solvent dry before you can add more pastel over top of it?
So, you know, I just did that earlier. It's dry enough. Although, like I said, I think I added a little too much in that corner, but I should be able to take this and kind of go right back on top. Yep. It does not take long at all. And actually what's funny is I can feel the solvent still a little wet on there. So it's kind of making my pastels almost kind of work a little bit more like oil paints, which is something you can absolutely kind of experiment with, is if you have solvent on your piece and then start drawing into it, which is a really fun kind of finish. It's hard to explain what it looks like, but it's really weird in a good way. If you can master it, yeah. Did I answer that completely? I feel like I just gave you a very convoluted question or answer to that question. Hopefully that made sense. So I am gonna start playing with a little bit of these blues, kind of coming through. Yeah. Put some blues down here. All right. Why did I put the orange over here? What? Don't do this. I can't. I can't get it out of there. Don't put the little ones in where the big ones go. That's hard to do. All right, so purple. I think this is the violet. I'm gonna add a little bit up here as well. Kind of have that going into that orange. It's like a bit of a sunsetty look. Now remember, I am scribbling, so it looks a little bit like crayon at this point, but if I take my finger and I kind of blend it back out, looks less like a crayon scribble. I think I do need to kind of lighten that up a little bit. So then go back in, because that blue and that orange are mixing right there and giving me a little bit of mud, which is not what I wanted, but I mean, it's still okay. Not mad at it. Now this is where I probably shouldn't put that black in until the very, very end. So what I'm gonna actually do is I'm gonna kind of scrape it back out and pick those pigments back up just on that mast, because what I want to do is scribble over top of it, because you need to work from your background to your foreground, and that's just one of those things that, like, I can tell this side didn't match this side. So if you scribble over the whole thing, it now looks like it belongs. And it makes more sense, kind of a thing. There we go. Now, take this guy. You get a pretty thin line too, which is quite nice. Ah, there's a boat with a mast. Let me do a little bit of this like pink down here. I'm doing a really light coat of this, this pink. I don't know what color that is. I think that's the magenta. Yeah, it looks like it matches magenta. But I'm only doing a really light coat there because I'm going back in with this gray rose and kind of blending the two together by scribbling them together. Is that a technical term? Scribble? Kind of gives me a little bit of sunsetty vibes. There we go. Blend that back out with my finger. Just to kind of fill in all those little black specks that I missed. And again, I can go back over and kind of lighten it up a bit. But I kind of want to darken it up a bit and kind of make where this sheet of rain is kind of coming down. I want to kind of blend that out a little bit and make it less like a perfect line. Because if you've seen that before, you know that there's not like an exact line. Usually it's a little bit fuzzy. There you go. So it still goes from light to dark pretty quickly. But it has a little bit more of a transition to it, which I'm gonna kind of pop this purple over here too. There we go. That section. Where's that chunky orange? Let's go back in. Get this chunk of black that I haven't drawn over yet. Kind of carve out the top of this cloud because this is the cloud where the light's starting to hit that, and so the sky behind it needs to be darker to push that back into space. So I'm gonna actually take a little bit of violet and do that.
Facebook would like a little more demonstration on the solvent blending.
Solvent blending, you got it. Let me do it right here, actually. So when I do solvent blending, remember you need to get a really, really, really thick layer of your pastels. So don't do a really light coat like up here where you can still see the black kind of sparkling through. You need like a solid layer. So push down hard when you do that, right? So let me grab some of this purple. I have a good amount of oil pastels there, right? So again, I'm gonna go back in with my 4 Bright. It's a nice stiff bristle brush. We get just the smallest amount of spike oil. And honestly, I'm going to probably take some of that off because like I said, I added a little bit too much on that corner there. Nope, I do actually need more. I think it's soaked up into my brush. All right, so just saturate the area. I have a feeling this vermilion is going to blend up because it's a very strong color. Not exactly what I was intending, but that's okay. So I'm just kind of doing almost like canvas mixing. When you're mixing your oils onto your canvas, like you've already laid down a color and you've got a different color on your brush, it's kind of like that. So I'm almost mixing them together on my canvas here, just by like small little strokes here. Because if I were to really scrub, I'm gonna pick up too much of that pigment and I'm gonna give myself a dark spot because my canvas, my surface is toned dark. So let me actually do what I was talking about earlier, get some solvent on there and see if I can add that back in. Yeah, it's like a really slick surface now. So there you go. There's my nice blend of all 3 of those colors. that make sense? All right.
What else can you use to blend besides your brushes and your fingers?
You can use a towel just like this. Here, let me knock some of that little like excess little bits off, which will happen with any pastels. All right, so let me blend. You know what? Actually, let me do the bottom here. I haven't touched that. You can use so you can use what's that called? A blending stump, a tortillon. Tortillon. I love saying that too. That's a good word. So you can use a blending stump if you don't want to use your fingers. You can. Ooh, that's really, really colorful. I don't think I like that. You can use paper towel or like a rag like this, a cotton rag. You can use the solvent, which I really need to close before I spill it everywhere. And a brush. You can use your fingers. I feel like there's something else that I've used before. So I'm just trying to like test out my colors here. Ooh, I really like this color. This is gray pink. It seems like a really nice color. All right. Trying to remember if there was anything else. So as far as this ground area here, there's not a single color that I found that I really like go, that's the color, you know? It's a combination of like purples and yellows coming together to give you this like kind of desaturated brown tone. And that's why I'm using, this is burnt ochre, which has a lot of those yellows in it. But I'm going to lay this down as my base and then go on top of that and blend colors together. So remember, again, I'm doing a really solid coat of this pastel. I'm not being light-handed with it at all. Now, yeah, I'm gonna go all the way across with this.
While you're doing that,
Yes.
does it matter if you do light over dark or dark over light?
You know what? I'm sure somebody's gonna have opinions on this, but I have honestly not found that it makes much of a difference to me because, like, I would imagine, like for me, like I go back and forth between the two different. Like I start making some areas darker, and then I'll go back in and make them lighter. I've always gone back and forth between that, so I don't find that it's a bit of either one of those. Just kind of, I just kind of go crazy. I just start scribbling whatever color I see wherever I see it. Which, with the 72 set, you have a lot of options. All right, so bit of like a kind of a shadow right here. I'm guessing that's probably where the water is, like, you know, when it, like you've gone to a beach before and then like the water has receded, like it's low tide, but you can still see where the water used to be. Like there's that line when it was a higher tide. I'm guessing that's what that is. The Floridian in me is telling me that's what that is. Could be wrong. What color is this? Sorry, I was just using that gray pink to kind of lighten that up. This is burnt umber, which is the original color. Wait, no. So I was using burnt ochre. Burnt umber looks like it's a little bit more orange. Yeah, just slightly. But I want a purple. Let's go in with this violet. Just kind of along that line. All right, so somewhere in there, yeah. Kind of darken this area. So I'm gonna use my rag. I'm gonna actually get it on my finger just like this. So I'm technically gonna be like I'm blending with my finger, but I'm using the rag instead of my finger as the surface to do that. Just to kind of soften those colors, like the marks that I'm making, you know? And you can even get a little bit of solvent on here if you wanted to. But if you start blending other areas, like you see that I just have my finger right here and I was blending that out. Now if I wanted to come back up here and start blending this area, make sure you move your finger, otherwise you're gonna get this brown color, this ochre color up here in your clouds. And I don't think that would look great. But that's where you're gonna kind of start mixing your colors together, and it's not gonna be intentional. So that's the other way that you can blend, other than just using the pastels. Let me actually grab this ultramarine dark. So I did a huge chunk of purple right here, and I haven't actually gone back in with it. And if I go back over here with this blue, and then I go back in with the same purple, I can actually blend them together if I go back and forth, kind of like that. That's another way of mixing. So let me actually get the same blue. I don't want to have that blue in just one spot. All right, so let me address this area. The way that I did this grass area before was just kind of like how I approached the rest of it. It was very scribbly and very messy. So this is a yellow gray. Now I can indicate there is grass here. I'm not really paying attention to too much of the, like, I'm not trying to draw every blade of grass. I'm indicating where the color is. And the reason for that, I will show you in just a minute. So let me go in with this leaf green, which is a little bit darker. So when you do, that's one thing when I draw anything that's like foliage or something that is nature, that like some kind of a plant, I usually layer, especially with oil pastels, I layer pretty much every green I can get my hands on, because if you use like green straight out of the, like if you just use one green, oops, I got some green up in my sky now. Ignore that. Whoopsie daisies. If you just use one green, it tends to look a little flat. So I might even use, maybe I will use a little bit of this turquoise. Why not? Throw that in there.
Speaking of layering,
Yes.
I have a couple questions.
Got it.
Can you keep on layering? Like, is there a limit to how much you can layer?
You know what? I feel like there is a point where your panel will not accept any more oil pastels. Like, you're just going to be moving oil pastel on top of oil pastel. Like, you're going to start scraping off what you've already put on. Now, if you let it dry, because it is technically an oil, I would say the only way of continuing to go back on top of it is to maybe varnish it and give you a kind of an isolation layer. But again, it needs to be something that has tooth to it. If it's slick and it's like glossy, your next layer is just gonna slide right off of its surface and you're gonna be fighting it the entire way. So I would say there is a bit of a level of how much you can put down, but it depends on the surface that you use. I like this resist grip because it can take a lot. Paper can take quite a bit too. So it honestly just depends on what you use. It's an experimental kind of a thing that you're gonna have to get the material and then kind of see what you can do.
And is that the same kind of when you're going over where you blended with the solvent, same thing?
Yeah, it's about the same thing. Like right here, I just went back over the top of that and it still accepted more of the pastel, but I told you I put a little too much solvent up here, so it kind of took a lot of the pigments back off and a lot of that oil. So it's kind of a give and take. Like there's only so much that's gonna go on top before you start removing it, I guess. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
We do have, I know we talked about this earlier, we do have one question. Somebody was asking about the water-soluble pastels. Does it work in the same way as, is the water equivalent to the solvent?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's, again, one of those things where, like, whenever you hear that it's a water-soluble whatever kind of a thing, whether it's oils, the oil pastels, or like gouache is a water-soluble kind of a media, it all kind of acts the same as what you're used to. It just happens to be that the solvent is now water instead of a spike oil or a turpentine or something like a mineral spirit kind of thing. All right, so that's what I was doing, the grass. I lost my train of thought. Talk about solvents and stuff. All right, so there are a ton of greens on here. I'm not actually gonna use, you can see this, every single one, just because we don't have time. So this is a grass green. So I've done a couple layers of green. This is my 4th green that I've put on here, just to kind of indicate that there is something going on there. The other thing I do like to do is brown. So this is a dark brown, just because, you know, as plants die and kind of grow and keep going, like they have little bits that are not beautiful and bright green. So if you throw that in there, it makes it look a little bit more natural. Now we do need to still kind of put some of that sand back into this area. So I'm going to use that burnt ochre just to kind of indicate where that sandy bits are. And again, I'm not too worried about the drawing, and I'll show you why in just a second. But I am going to give this a nice solid coating. Where's that gray pink? Honestly, I probably should have done this bit before I drew all the grass, because I'd want to, again, go from the background to the foreground, and the grass is on top of the sand, but that's okay. It's pretty forgiving. I can go back in with this green and just say, there's grass here. Do you want a nice dark green? What is this, cobalt green? How green is this green? It's pretty green. All right, so those big leafy bits that kind of stick up, I'm going to start drawing them. Remember, you don't want them to all be the same size or the same direction. All right, I got pastel bits all over this drawing, and I do have just a couple over here in the corner, which is good. All right, now for those, probably gonna go back in with a couple of different colors of green because it's on this really, really dark background. So that's the only way that you're gonna be able to really see them, is if I highlight them like that. I can honestly do it to all of them. There's something I wanted to do. Just kind of make it consistent though. All right, so I added the whole pack that comes with this guy. This is again for ceramics, but this one is probably by far my favorite one, just because you can use it like a drawing tool. So if I go back in and scratch all those pastels back out, it gives me an indication of that foliage, and like I drew the whole thing. which like right here, I was getting a little bit light in my application of the pastels. So like down here, it's way more noticeable as far as the scratches because I have a lot of layers. Now for this grass, I might do the same thing. Scribblies, because grass is wild and messy, and I might even have a couple coming back up through here. And there you go, my grass. And I think that's about all the time that we have as well. So that is another way of kind of drawing back into your pastels. But I'm gonna call this guy as done as it's gonna be. Like I still have some areas where I would continue to address it, like this huge chunk of black right here where I didn't actually draw anything. Let's just real quick pretend like I did that. Haha! Blend it back up. Now, as far as the lightning is concerned, the one way that I did this prior to like this other one, and you can kind of see them side by side here. So it's a little bit more on the pink and kind of purpley blue tones, but the way that I did this lightning is that I took the oil pastel and I really scrubbed it down on my palette and did a puddle of just like a chunk of it, and then took some solvent, crushed it up a little bit more, and then brushed it on with my #1 round brush. So I actually did go in and paint it just like I would with oil paints. You can also use oil paints if you, again, have a panel and not paper. And then I ended up taking, where is that tool? This guy, and scratching just the underside of my lightning just to kind of give it a little bit more of depth. But that was kind of how I approached that, because I know I'm not gonna be able to get all of that over here. We just simply do not have time. So that was oil pastel, guys. I know we kind of rushed through it, and I hope you guys got a chance to really dive in and jump in with some colors and just kind of play with the material and scribble and get messy with it. And you know, if you blend with your fingers and get it on your hands, it's okay because it's non-toxic and you can get messy with these, which is really fun. Do we have any questions before I jump out of here?
Before you jump out,
Yes.
Lots of people were asking earlier about how you were going to varnish or spray fix it.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked. All right.
I think that you got into.
Yes. So this right here, this is the Sennelier Fixative for oil pastels. I honestly have not seen another fixative specifically for oil pastels in another brand. I could be wrong on that, but this is the only one that I'm personally aware of. But the reason why you don't want to just use any fixative is because this is actually designed to specifically get those oil pastels more like dry, I guess, because it does dry similar to oil paints where it does need to oxidize over time. This kind of speeds up that process. So this is the way that I fix all of my pastels. Now besides that, it does protect it from dust, because as it does sit for a while, it is still kind of sticky. So dust particles will kind of be drawn to this like a magnet, especially if you're in my house and I just, you know, it's just dust, and I have a dog, and there's dog hair everywhere. So this is the way that I kind of keep my paintings, my oil pastels, from getting all of that kind of stuck onto it, which is a pain. Now, if it does get stuck onto it, what I have done before is taken a nice soft brush and kind of fluffed that stuff off of there and then fixed it. Now besides that, what you can use once it's like fully cured and dry is any regular varnish. I would specifically use the ones that are made for oil paints. If you want to change your surface from satin to glossy to matte, those are really nice to use, and there are a lot more of a variety as far as those options. But this is what I would use to kind of give it a barrier, especially while it's still technically curing. That makes sense. Hope that makes sense. I hope it didn't like cause like 13,000 more questions. I feel like it did, but I will be going back through the questions and the comments and making sure that I answer all of the ones that I didn't get to. But I think, any other questions? Did we address? Okay.
Most of them. Everything else.
Awesome.
There were a couple in there that they did tag you in. They had some questions that weren't quite
oil pastel related.
So yeah.
That's okay. I will go back through and answer all of your questions. But that was oil pastels. I hope you guys get a chance to draw this. Even if you don't draw it in oil pastels, I've added the picture to the Jerry's Live group, so you should join if you're not part of the group, because it is a beautiful community of artists of different walks of life and different media, and we all just kind of get together and promote each other as artists. And if you have questions, or if you have things like you wanted to do this painting, but you didn't have time today, or if you wanted to find the reference photo of that, I've uploaded it there, and you guys can post your own artwork there. Especially because we're like, no one's mean. We're all gonna just support each other, you know? It's a judgment-free zone. But that was the oil pastels. The reference photo is on the Jerry's Live group, and if you do post it on Facebook, you should tag me in it. Tag Jerry's Artarama as well as my host page, which is Emmy, host of Jerry's Live. My team will be putting those in the chat. I'm sure they have already. But if you post it on Instagram, also make sure to tag me. My handle is misscakes.art. You can also go there and check out my own personal artwork or my general shenanigans where I get paint in my hair, because that happened. Also tag in Jerry's Artarama Instagram account, which is Jerry's Artarama. I know there's a lot of different accounts, like Jerry's Artarama of Nashville. That's the separate stores, but just the account Jerry's Artarama. And then be sure to also tag in the code JL188, because I would love to see your artwork. I want to find it. So make sure that you join me next week, though, because I'm going to be doing a watercolor portrait in only 5 washes. Only 5. Just a challenge kind of a thing. And you guys might even be able to pick my colors, depending on how bold I am that day. But if you do want to join me for that one, though, you can also join me and print out the image. So I did also upload that image. It's a woman, black and white line drawing that you can find in the Jerry's Live group as well. It's also on my host page. All you have to do is print that out on watercolor paper. Make sure you use a laser printer, and that's it. And then just join me next week with your favorite watercolors, although I'm going to be using the Lucas, and they are fantastic for this. So if you want to check out that teacher's cart, I think that's JL189 if you search for the code for that one. But that's going to be next week, guys, and that was Oil Pastels. I hope you had fun. Love you all. Bye!